Good afternoon, teachers. I want to take a couple of minutes just to review your readings on virtual reality and augmented reality, and I hope that you enjoyed those activities. I hope you rolled up your sleeves and got in there and really looked at the videos and the actual app itself for Google Expeditions, which is probably the most popular one and the one that, as far as free technologies that we're talking about, when we get into the Oculus Rift, we're entering a whole different realm, and we're actually in the process of purchasing a couple of those for use in class next year. That's a whole different realm of AR, VR than we're talking about, because a lot of schools, don't have access to those technologies. But Google Cardboard allows access, and that's why it's so important to these technologies. And of those, probably the most popular is the Expedition. So I hope you had a chance to look at those, as well as the videos, which are a totally different experience when you have the goggles on and you're completely kind of immersed in that space. So let's talk just real quickly about AR and VR. So virtual reality, it's just an immersive multimedia or computer simulated reality that replicates an environment and stimulates a physical presence in that place, either in the real world or imagined world. So, for example, you're riding a roller coaster, right? And so you're hearing the sounds. If you're wearing goggles, you're getting the motion through the movement of the camera, like you're on that roller coaster. So it's appealing to your senses, right, to replicate that environment. Some of them allow the user to interact in that world. Often it involves using a headset, right, as you see here. And there's our old friend, the Google Cardboard, right there, which again, you can get those for as cheap as a couple of dollars. They're just not the real name brand Google Cardboard. There are some concerns about this. I recently read an article about privacy concerns and the fact that one of the big players in this is Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, and there is some data mining that's going on where that's being possibly used for additional development of virtual or AI, artificial intelligence, and there's been some concerns about the use of these goggles for reading human emotions and emotional responses. So just putting that out there. If anyone's interested in the article, just drop me a line and I'll send that article to you, email it to you. So what is VR still talking about that? As I was just saying, the purpose is it attempts to trick our perceptions through our senses, primarily by simulating our vision and hearing, creating a strong sense of being present in that environment. Of course, I gave you the example of the roller coaster because it's such one, if you've experienced one, that is very similar, but it could have been, the one where you're standing there with the elephants again, and you're feeling through the sound and the motion there that you're amongst them, so to speak. The history of virtual reality can be tracked back to the 50s. Articles started appearing in educational literature as early as the 1990s. We're talking about hardware and software being used here in this particular technology. Augmented reality, or AR, is a technology that layers computer-generated enhancements on top of an existing reality in order to make it more meaningful through the ability to interact with it. So we see what is probably like a hamster in the picture here that somebody's taken a picture of through Snapchat, and it's put the little nose and ears on it. AR is developed into apps and used on mobile devices like Snapchat that I just mentioned, to blend digital components into real world in such a way that they enhance one another. Another example of that, there's some great anatomy apps out there, some of them free, some of them that of course you have to pay for. And essentially, like the one that I use, essentially what you do with it is it's just called Human AR Anatomy. You just have to point it at some sort of textured surface, and a body essentially pops up. You're looking at your screen, and you can see this body, like it's, right there in the room, and then you can start to, with your fingers on the screen, you can peel away, like if you're using an iPad or just your mobile phone. It's better on an iPad because it's larger, but you can start peeling away using your fingers different parts of the body, the skin, the nervous system, skeletal structure. Excuse me, very neat app. Some other examples down there, of course, Pokemon Go is one that's been very popular recently. Obviously, of course, Snapchat too. Most of us, if we're following sports, we're familiar with the first down line being projected onto the field and so on. So what do you need to engage in these technologies? A smartphone or a tablet, a back-facing camera, an augmented reality app like I just mentioned, and then some sort of trigger image when we're talking about AR, right? So there's something that you're going to point the device at, and it will stimulate something to happen, just like the merge cubes, the little cushiony, styrofoamy squares that you can hold. They have textures on each side, and you can hold that in your hand and point your device on it. If you point it at one side, a human brain pops up, and you can rotate it around and look at the human brain, and kind of like I mentioned with the anatomy app, you can pull different parts of it off to look into the brain. The triggers can sometimes be as simple as a QR code, or it can be a printout, or like I said, with the merge cube, an object like that. What are the benefits for using these virtual realities and augmented realities in our classroom? One can be increased engagement, which is something that I've talked about with several of you as it relates to benefits to include in your benchmarks. A big benefit of using technology is that students are engaged through its use. The degree of mobile learning, right? So, if you're talking about something like QR codes, you can experience those everywhere. But there are lots of different apps. The ones that are coming to mind for me are elementary apps that you have the trigger object that you can spread out like around the room. I think Wonderscope is one, ARG is another one. The main one I'm looking for, I don't see. Let's see here. Lunch Rush is another one where you can move these triggers around different parts of the room or of the school. Easy to use, they're affordable, they're interactive, and these are all from Ray and Deb article. Ray and Deb also found that they can increase student performance. Additional benefits, simulations. Simulations are huge learning tools. That's why they are used in things from aeronautics and other other medical field and so on. Use of simulations. Use them for field trips. You're not going to probably be able to get your kids and to take them out to the Serengeti to see lions, but you can if you are using these virtual tools. Or to go and visit Pearl Harbor if you're teaching a lesson on that, but using Google Expeditions, you can take them on a field trip to that. And a lot of real-world connections. Other benefits, cultural understanding, increased cultural understanding by visiting different cultures, global awareness, again, visiting different places, historical perspective, and social emotional learning, although there is some concern or conflicting evidence that is not long-lasting. Development of 21st century skills, encouraging, for example, through creation of augmented and virtual reality. So I don't think they have it anymore. I was unable to find it the last time I looked, but initially Google had a Google camera that you could create, an app that you could download, that you could create your own experiences where you were in a virtual reality. So you do a 360 degree. So let's say that you took a trip to the Grand Canyon in the for your summer vacation. You could create your own virtual reality and lesson about that experience for your students when you came back the next year. It encourages students to approach problems from alternative perspectives, augments learning, tech challenges that students may encounter become teachable moments, and Castaneda and Pacamera also found increase in engagement. Okay, benefits include continue to be, if you got those goggles out, you're probably not going to be distracted. Or, if you're wearing those goggles, you're probably not going to be distracted. Includes only the intended content. So unlike having a device where, they're surfing the internet or have access to the internet, again, there's some degree of control here. Format that children are familiar with. They use these types of tools, obviously, Snapchat and Pokemon Go, so that removes that barrier. That also can help kids to be open to experiences that may scare them. I won't go into that because that's kind of a long, for example, if you're scared of being on top of high places, you can desensitize yourself to it by experiencing it through apps or spiders that you're experiencing. That's one way to face them is, they're obviously not going to be harmful if you're, manipulating them through a virtual tool. Okay. Benefits of VR and AR continue. Deeper learning is dependent on the lesson plan. So again, it's never about the technology. It's about what you, the teacher, are doing with the technology. It's important after you take this Google expedition that you have students demonstrate learning through some format, traditional or otherwise, right? So maybe they have to record a Flipgrid video, as an exit slip of what they learned. And again, we're always interested in creating, or having students created. The more student-centered we can be, the better. That's what our ultimate goal always is as Dewey-inspired constructivists, right? Students doing. And what we have here is a picture of a Google Cardboard before it has been assembled. You can see the cost of, and this is the barriers, some of these tools, and of course they've gotten much more expensive than this now. Barriers, costs, time that's needed to just engage in the experience, as well as training. As I said earlier, the empathy that is created is either not genuine or is short-lasting, short in its duration. Sometimes it makes people sick. Research thus far showed females more so than male. I've never seen an explanation for why that is, but just I've seen in multiple places that is. There are ethical considerations that we sort of become voyeurs in people. So I think there's an experience where you can visit some refugee camps or other impoverished areas, and there's some concerns about sort of being this sort of voyeuristic element to it. Got to sanitize them afterwards. If I had the Google Cardboards, you would see that in action in my class, because if you look at the foreheads of the Google Cardboard, there's a little greasy spot on it where students have used it in the past. It can be noisy, right? Kids are up moving around, they're laughing, they're ah and oohing and ahhing, and that they can be dangerous because they got them on and they could be tripping over things. And you do have some technology issues if the Wi-Fi is not strong, and of course, again, those are the really nice ones that become very expensive. Okay, and if you're not familiar with Google Cardboard, if you haven't seen it, it's been around since about 2014, and what it is just a cheap VR, virtual reality set. That's all it is. And the benefit of it is that it overcomes the primary barrier to access, which is cost. So it's a great tool, and if you haven't invested in one, I recommend that you do. You can find little plastic sets at Walmart over in like the TV section for about $5 also, if you don't want to order one. Virtual reality applications can take your students out of the classroom and in entirely new lands, environments, and experiences. Travel globally or outer space. We've kind of already talked about that, and I think that is about it. Okay, so that covers talking about your readings for that. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I always do when we teach it in class. I hope everyone's well, and I will speak to you at a later date.